everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, we were talking before the show, and there is nothing worse than a college basketball season where the first day of the NCAA tournament is just like, everyone won by 13 points exactly, and it was not very exciting, and there were no buzzer beaters, and no upsets, and that just completely makes an entire college basketball season a complete waste to me. This was the exact opposite. Tony, that was a freaking awesome day of college basketball on Thursday.
It was good. A little insight into my life. I take my dogs out for the last time at 9 p.m., but I couldn't because all of these games are close, and then they're running in succession. It's like I didn't get to take them out until like 9:45. It was like Die Hard 2 and all of the planes start landing in succession right after one after the other because, they finally have, they're just coming in all at the same time there. And yeah, I couldn't leave, and then when one game is over, it's like the way they plot it is exactly for what happened last night is to, all right, we'll start them every 20 minutes. That way, once you get done with one close finish, hopefully there's another. And that's the way it was. And those are fun ones. And Tom, I'm proud to say my bracket is still perfect.
Tony, you're not going to find a bigger St. Peter's Peacocks fan in Central Ohio than I am. Like, I actually was aware of St. Peter's before yesterday, which I think most people probably couldn't say, but I grew up not that far from Jersey City. You remember Devin? I think it was Devin Smith. There was a kind of like bench player, walk-on guy, I think, for Ohio State in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. He actually was a GA at St. Peter's. So, I when I played the college basketball game, I would every once in a while play as St. Peter's, like way back in the day. It is a delight. It is almost impossible to explain to people how St. Peter's, like as an institution, like it's a commuter school. It's a very small school. It is not in a super fantastic area of northeastern New Jersey. It is, the facilities are like non-existent there. So for them to beat Kentucky, like that is like that is, it's not quite UMBC over. Well, I take that back. I think it's even more of a surprise than UMBC over Virginia because the garbage style that Virginia plays keeps other teams in it. Like, there's no reason for St. Peter's to be able to hang with Kentucky, and it just warms your heart, Tony, to watch John Calipari flame out early. One of college basketball's real good guys, and just the thought that Adolph Rupp somewhere was looking up, watching that game, and saying, "Boy, not only did Kentucky lose, but it's really hot here." Tony, it was just one of those wonderful days of college basketball that you just. Even if you don't love the sport most of the year, like, man, that was a day that would make you love the sport.
Well, and that's the kind of day that makes you look forward to it every year because these are the kind of days that you remember. And although I don't, you got to feel for the Kentucky fan base and program. I mean, to be just the shame that must come from losing to a 15 seed as a 2 seed. That's inexcusable. Perhaps fireworthy of John Calipari. No, I stopped looking at my bracket after game 2 because I'm pretty sure I got that one wrong, as we don't want to talk about our brackets. I did take Michigan though, Tom, because if Michigan was going to win and be happy, then I wanted to be happy as well. And if they would have lost, it's okay.
Yeah, I did not do any brackets in any kind of bracket competitions, and my son is 8 and completely sports obsessed, almost 9, and like in exactly that time when I remember, like, this is when I remember getting like completely obsessed with doing brackets as a kid. So I get it. So he insisted that we all fill out brackets as a family, and as I shared in a previous show, my wife just annihilates everyone in brackets every year. So I have no hope of anything. So it's just like I filled out my bracket and immediately, everyone's like rooting for their teams. I'm like, I don't care. I've got Kentucky in the Final Four. I don't care at all. Let's see. Let's bring on the chaos. I'm going to lose anyway. We might as well have a little fun on the way. So yeah, that was that. I am all for it. And Friday can't possibly live up to Thursday, right? I mean, like Thursday was like I put my son to bed before the Kentucky game ended. I'm like, I will come in and tell you who wins, and then the game goes to overtime. I'm like, "All right, get up. You're watching you're watching overtime." And then it was like, all right, you got to go to bed as soon as this game ends. As soon as this game. All right, well, Creighton and San Diego State, it's really okay. You can see it just for the end is okay. It went to overtime. Okay, well, you can see it just till over, and it was just like, oh, hey, well, now my kids are going to bed at like 10:15. I'm a great dad, anyway. So college basketball, hooray!
Games are finally over Thursday night. I think at like 12:45, if my clock didn't deceive me, ish, and that's a bit late for most kids. But yeah, some groggy mornings for teachers and students all over America today, which we love. And just thinking back to my high school days when March Madness was happening, our librarian, Dr. Bob, would bring in a TV and have it for us in the library for these, the first week of Thursday and Friday. And so you would go in there in study hall. You would find any reason you could to say, hey, I need to go to the library. I want to, to any teacher, any class, independent study, I'm tutoring, like any reason you could to spend all day or, the second half of the day in the library, and good times there as well.
Yeah, I remember our AV teacher who was like also the head football coach, which is kind of a weird combination. He was
Did he have you guys cut and film? Is that basically all he did?
he was like the AV coordinator. It wasn't in like you took a class. It was just like the AV coordinator. And you could like he would have the TV on. I remember very clearly a number 2 seed UConn playing a number 15 seed UT Chattanooga, the Mocs at one point. And that was the 12 o'clock game on either a Thursday or Friday. I very clearly remember watching that game in the AV room. Yes, much the same setup there. So yeah, that's and I feel like I don't mean to back in my day, but back in my day, Tony, back in our day, Tony, uh, it's almost impossible to explain to people now where you could just like flip channel to channel. Like there used to be like there was one game on.
Mm-hmm.
There was one game on, and whatever was on CBS in your market, that was what you were watching. So if you lived in Connecticut and UConn was playing, you were watching the UConn game. And if there was a buzzer beater going on somewhere else, like, well, you might see it, they might cut in for a little bit, but maybe not. And then you would have that gap between the games where the afternoon games were done, the afternoon sessions were done, and then there was the one game going on the West Coast, but they always had the stupid CBS Evening News on, and you were missing this game, and you're pulling your hair out. Like, there's a tournament going on, and I can't see it. Tony, I think in many ways, the modern America is I'm trying not to use the word hellscape, but it's not ideal in many ways. But Tony, I would say the NCAA tournament viewing has definitely improved since the late 80s, early 90s.
Well, even in like the early 2000s, late 90s, me and a buddy of mine, if you've never traveled to one of these settings, I would recommend it because it's incredibly fun because you get a ticket for the entire window of games there. So you can watch whatever games you want. And then if your team advances, like you have nothing to do the next day. So what we would do is, I think we were in Greensboro, and I don't know what year it was. It would have been somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s, like I said, before I got married, certainly. So we go to, I think it was Greensboro. We went to a few different tournaments, but so Ohio State plays one day, and then of course they're off, and they may actually have lost. I don't know. I don't think they did, but so then the next day we just go to Damon's. We get there when it opens at 11 o'clock. And to tell you how long ago it was,
back in the day.
Yeah. So we go to Damon's, and we're just there from opening to close, watching, the different screens of basketball. And if you've ever eaten 3 meals and drank all day at Damon's, let me tell you, it is not a cheap day. And so that was like the first time I've ever had over $100 bar tab, and good times were had by all. But that was the experience then. It's like you go to games one day, next day you go to Damon's, and then you go to games the next day where you go home or whatever, and just wall-to-wall basketball, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I've only gone to the NCAA tournament once and seen it, and that was the year, it was 2011. I had to look this up. But 2011, Ohio State was playing, they were a 1 seed. They were playing up in Cleveland and played George Mason in the second round. And it was a game where, The ESPN box score and recap and all this for this is not great. It's a little outdated now. But they had George Mason started out real. It was the second round. Ohio State had crushed whoever they had as the 16 seed. George Mason came out and was up 10 to 8, 10 to 6. I don't know, something like that. And then Ohio State went on like a 50-12 run, and it was like the most insane. Just I'm just reading the reading the recap right now. Over on George Mason's bench, a few players were mocking Jared Sullinger, Ohio State's fleshy freshman, who is frustrated and fuming. The Buckeyes are trailing and appeared vulnerable in the early moments of Sunday's third-round game. Editor's note, second-round game. The Patriots were getting physical, talking trash, and taking it right at the East Regional's top-seeded team. The team with no obvious weaknesses in Sullinger, who had 3 quick turnovers. That's when Ohio State center bumped Patriots forward Ryan Pearson from behind and whispered some shocking news. Quote, "It's over, yo," quote, Sullinger said, waving his hands. And it was, yo. Yes, Ohio State made 16 threes that game, 98-66. What happened after that to the 2011 Ohio State team? Tony, we're out of time. Sorry, we have to take a quick commercial break. I don't remember which flameout that was. That might have been the Kentucky year.
Was it the Kentucky loss at the buzzer?
Yeah, it might have been the Kentucky loss in the Sweet 16. Yeah, whoever it was, they had this incredibly dominating performance. You walked out of that arena going, man, they're going to win it all. And then Ron Howard narrator voice, they did not win it all. But Tony,
next year?
At least they didn't have to play St. Peter's.
That's true. And then the next year, I think George Mason went to the Final Four after that, if I recall.
Sounds right. Yes. Yeah.
So, yes. It's just a great weekend. And I don't have to tell you people that. So, Tom, we've got these listener questions that we wanted to get to. But I had a listener question Thursday night asking for the top 10 Buckeyes basketball players of the 2000s. So,
how are we defining top 10? Because, there's a way you could construct that list that Aaron Kraft is number 1 on that list, and there's a way you could construct that list that Aaron Kraft is not on that list. So which way have you chosen to construct that list?
Funnily enough, just the best 10 players. And you went through each roster from like 99, 2000, including Scooney Penn. So I just jotted down every player that might be in discussion for a top 10. I came up with 27 players. And then I went back down it again, immediately got a top 9.
Mm-hmm.
So my top 9 is Michael Redd, Greg Oden, Mike Conley, Evan Turner, Jared Sullinger, D'Angelo Russell, Jayshawn Tate, Keita Bates-Diop, all 3 in the same class, by the way. And then E.J. Liddell. So that's 9. And I think, Jayshawn Tate and Keita Bates-Diop was Big Ten Player of the Year, I believe. Jayshawn Tate proving himself in the NBA right now. But that leaves out guys so now I've got one spot left you've got,
I feel like David Lighty. I was going to say, I feel like David Lighty deserves a Lifetime Achievement Award for his 17 years of service.
Right. Games accumulated. John Diebler was a guy that, I think he could have been a 20-point scorer if he was on a different team because he was able to do stuff like that. William Buford, not he's on the outside. Deshaun Thomas, Aaron Kraft, Caleb Wesson, Dwayne Washington, maybe a Malachi Branham. I think it's too early for him. So basically I'm coming down to like David Lighty, Aaron Kraft, maybe Deshaun Thomas, maybe John Diebler. Didn't even mention BJ Mullins.
You did not. He is a triple threat, as you may or may not have been aware. One name that you didn't mention that I would have at least had in the initial list, just because he was so freaking fun. Sam Thompson. Like Sam Thompson was not one of the best, but one of my favorite Ohio State basketball players of the century, just because it was just like no one made you like jump off the couch, like involuntarily, like muscle spasm jump off the couch, like, oh, like Sam Thompson did.
Yeah, I think if you're talking 10 best athletes, basketball players at Ohio State in the 2000s, he's number 1. And then, we can discuss the rest of the 9, because he was insane. Because and that was back when they would run and they would throw alley-oops. They haven't had an athlete like him. Well, nobody really has athletes like him, but they haven't had those kind of athletes in a while. And he was incredible. also frustrating because he had the NBA athleticism, just never put the rest of it together and would flash at times. So, he hit 3 threes in this game and then goes 0 for 4 the next. But so I'm really torn on this with this last one. I probably have to go with Aaron Kraft because of his impact. But, I also don't want to leave David Lighty out of this, but David Lighty played for so long and was never the best player on his team, perhaps. Maybe 1 year later on in the career, maybe he was. But Aaron Kraft was like a 3.5-year starter, and probably going to have to go Aaron Kraft because if I leave him out, then people are going to be upset, and I might also be upset.
Sometimes we will tweak these questions a little bit to help shape the conversation. So maybe you just tweak this to who are the top 12 basketball players this century at Ohio State, and then then you've got your list, and you're all set. Tony, we've solved the problem.
The Dandy Dozen, as I like to call it, as I've always known it as.
How many players are on a basketball roster, Tony? Let's solve this problem in a very logical way.
13 scholarship players. Oh, so let's add John Diebler to this as well.
There you go. Boom. Got your man coming off the bench. John Diebler was one of those guys who, like Sam Thompson was the guy who was like, man, I wish NBA Jam was still a thing. Like if there was a college version of NBA Jam, you could play with Sam Thompson. Frankly, Sam Thompson and John Diebler would have been a very fun duo in NBA Jam. But yeah, just a regular college basketball game, just like, I don't know, double dribble, whatever the kids are playing today for the college basketball video games. Have John Diebler out there just launching from the logo and just hitting, like, I mean, you forget, like there was a half against Michigan, and I don't remember, I couldn't even begin to tell you what year this was, but there was a half against Michigan where they just hit like 12 threes and a half, and it was just John, one of those like John Diebler games where he's like 9 for 10, he's got like 30 points at halftime. Every once in a while he would have one of those games and it was just like, yeah, I hope you guys weren't planning to win this game because that is just not happening today.
By the way, Tom, speaking of video games, I saw EA Sports tweet out a tease that maybe there's a March Madness basketball game in the works as well. And really, I think those games are never all that great back when I would play them. They weren't as good as the NBA Live games. Again, to go way back and talk about the 90s again, but like in the 2000s. But with some time, you would think maybe they would be better, and they should be better. But also, let me close my window, Tom. Sorry. It's nice here in Ohio. But it's been so long since they haven't had a game like, I don't know, like 2009 or something, that now there would be some fervor for it. So even if it's a bad game, people are still going to want it, and EA is going to cash in. Whenever they get around to it, all of this delaying crap is really annoying, but that's neither here nor there. So looking forward to that one as well.
Yes, that should be fun. I keep looking at video game systems, and it's like, well, I don't want my children to waste their childhood, so we're not going to have one in the house. But once there's a college football game, like, well, guys, Dad feels you're ready. Mom and Dad have talked about it, and we feel you're ready for a video game system. My wife's gonna be like, "What did we talk about?" Like, nothing. Shh, it's okay. It's fine. We're good. Anyway, hope you guys like football.
That's why you keep the PS5 in your office. It's for everybody.
We don't want you guys to derail your studies. Yes. Speaking of not derailing things, Tony, we were supposed to be doing a football show today, and we've spent like half of it talking about basketball. So maybe more than half of it talking about basketball. So we should probably do a little bit of football. Or
do you want to hear about my bracket?
Oh man! So speaking of your bracket, first question from Tampa Buckeye 2343. It sounds like Evan Pryor is taking the next step. Does this push Marcus Crowley out?
Yeah, that's, I think, something we have talked about, where Marcus Crowley is out this spring, Evan Pryor is in, and this is obviously a huge opportunity for him to show what he can do, to show he can be the third back and have no competition for it, really, because it's just Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, and Evan Pryor who are the only healthy scholarship running backs. So they're going to get a ton of work. They're going to be able to see what Evan Pryor is capable of. He spent last year getting bigger and getting stronger. He came in at like 192. He's playing at 192. Now he's at 202. So he's put in the work, and he has to show that he can do stuff between the tackles. That's one of the things they've talked to him about. And he's, he says he's a much tougher runner than he was last year, and he'll show that, and people will be surprised by that. So Yeah, unfortunately, Marcus Crowley not talent, it's the injuries that have doomed him. And eventually, as you continue to recruit, not only do the injuries catch up with you, but the non-injured guys pass you by.
Yeah, and the question for Marcus Crowley is, when is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be healthy? He's not obviously healthy for spring. Is he going to be healthy for fall camp? Because he has, he when he has been on the field, he's been pretty good. You've seen a lot of potential from him, but you keep suffering these serious injuries, and it's like, well, that's gonna, that number one, at some point, it probably saps your speed and explosiveness a little bit, but also just you keep losing time, and there's enough other talented guys in that room that you're at risk of getting passed by. So when is he back? Is he back 100%? I think those are going to be very important questions, because we don't speculate about transfers, so we're not going to go into a big like, oh, where could he go kind of thing. But depending on when he's healthy, if you're transferring when you're hurt, that may limit your options a little bit. So it may be in his best interest to stick around this year. And if you're the fourth back, you're going to see some time because someone else is going to get hurt like that. You are going to see some time potentially. And I don't know that he's necessarily locked in as the fourth back, because there's stuff that he may be able to do that Evan Pryor can't do. So we'll have to see. But it definitely didn't help his career that he got hurt again the way that he did, because you go back to his freshman year when he hurt his knee against Maryland. He was averaging like 8 yards a carry. It was like, man, this kid is the real deal. Like he looked legit as a freshman, and then had that knee injury. Even wasn't even really ready. I mean, he talked about not really being completely up to speed even by the end of the 2020 season. Like, he was badgering Tony Alford, like, I'm ready to go. And then Tony Alford put him in the game, and he's like, yeah, I wasn't ready to go. Like, he wasn't quite back yet. Came back in 2021, looked pretty good again, and then boom, another injury. So yeah, you hope he can come back 100%, and you can really actually see what he can do when he's fully healthy. But it feels like we haven't gotten a full look at that yet. But remember, he was the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Florida as a senior. He was one of those guys who you kept hearing about as like a really underrated player in terms of recruiting rankings. Ohio State was very, very excited to get him. He hasn't been able to stay healthy long enough to actually be able to see it at the college level.
I think he's going to stay on the team this year. And again, we're not trying to push anybody out, but you wonder, you've done all of this rehab. Do you want to then go somewhere where you can play? And like, I've done all of this work. I would like to get something out of it in terms of carries and something to show for all of this work. Or are you okay being the fourth or fifth guy? And that's a question that obviously only he can answer. But also, like you said, there could be opportunities, but once you've got a freshman that takes over as a starter, it kind of just sets everybody's timetable back. And so that kind of forces some decisions from a lot of guys. And I expect him to be on the team this year just so he can get his footing back literally and figuratively, and then see where things go from there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. There's no reason to transfer. I mean, that's like trading a guy when he's hurt in baseball. Like, you're not going to get as much of a return. Like, don't sell low. He has a tremendous amount of potential, and whether he fulfills that at Ohio State or somewhere else, if he stays healthy, I think he's going to be a good back wherever that is, whether it's Ohio State or somewhere else. Next one from Otterbuck. Do we have 7 starter level offensive linemen? And I feel like the answer to this is there's definitely 5. I mean, I think they probably feel very, very good about their 5 right now. And, there are still some questions to be answered, but I think it's pretty inarguable that Paris Johnson is a starter level offensive lineman since he's already started. Matt Jones they felt good about him as a starter level guy last year. Luke Whippler, yes. DeJuan Jones, yes. You've heard them talk about Donovan Jackson this spring. Okay, there's your 5. They're very high on those 5. I think there probably are 5, 2 more guys in there somewhere, and there are a couple of guys who are banged up. Josh Fryer is missing spring. I think there's a possibility he's a starter level offensive lineman, but we're not going to find out until summer. They seem like they like Zen Michalski a good bit. Is he a starter level offensive lineman? Maybe not yet, but he's got a whole spring and a summer camp to get up to that level. there are, Enoch Vamahi is someone who they have played in, and at that second team level for a couple of years now. He's gotten looks at tackle, he's gotten looks at guard. I think he might be at that level at some point this year. I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting someone as well, but it feels like even if the answer to that is not at this exact moment, I think there's a real good possibility they have 6 to 7 guys they feel are starter level guys by the start of the Notre Dame game.
Yeah, it is interesting that they should have more, and I think you want to have a backup tackle, a backup guard, and a backup center. Right now, their backup center is Matt Jones.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like the next guy in, Jacob James, Kevin Wilson has said he's making strides. Obviously, they have Toby Wilson as well. So they probably got that. That's your top 4 centers right there. But I'm with you. Like Josh Pryor to me is the 6th man, and the fact that he can play guard or tackle is good. Same with Enoch Vamahi. But is anybody else going to step up to have two deep everywhere else? I don't know. And it was good to hear Zen Mahalski's name, but we haven't heard like Grant Touton or Trey LaRue or any of these other guys that have been around for a while and have now need to start getting into that 2 deep. So I think 7. Yeah, I'm with you. I think they will have that. And I think it's enough when you consider that Matt Jones is also the backup center. So like no matter who goes down, you can bring in honestly, you could probably just bring in Josh Pryor and mix stuff around and work with that. So it's almost terrifyingly to say, going back to the Jim Tressel, Jim Bowman thing, where we don't need 15 guys. We just need, 7 guys that can play every position. That's all you need is just a handful of 5-tool guys. You can play them wherever you want.
Yeah. And, I think they have an offensive line that's going to work. The problem with going with we only need 7 guys is if 1 or 2 of them gets hurt, then you don't have your 7 guys anymore. And I think the level behind those guys is probably a little better than it was during some of those Jim Bowman, Jim Tressel kind of teams. But I think you would need to have probably 3 offensive line injuries to get to a point where it's like, oh boy, I don't, is this guy ready for prime time right now? Maybe, maybe not. I do think, we're not going to get to see Fryer this spring, which is, unfortunate because I think he could cement himself in that, circle of trust basically on the offensive line. I think if he had been playing this spring, he could have kind of gotten himself in that spot. So now that's got to wait until a little later on in the summer. But it feels like they have enough pieces here. They have enough pieces where you're not like really stretching to move guys around. They've talked about Donovan Jackson potentially being able to play at tackle. They've talked about, we've already seen Paris Johnson play at guard. We've already, Matt Jones, being the backup center. Like you have enough options there. The Harry Miller having to medically retire from football, that took away one of the guys who definitely would have been in this conversation. If you had Harry Miller and Josh Fryer, healthy and good to go this spring, I think my answer to this would have been a pretty unequivocal yes. Without Harry Miller, with Josh Fryer now, still banged up a little bit, it's a little bit more wait and see. But I think ultimately the answer is going to be yes by the time by the time that answer actually matters. Let's do one more from Grant 93, and this is kind of a three part question. As a result of winter workouts and spring practice, which offensive line spot battle is the most contested and who is leading? Same questions for the linebacker and defensive line.
The offensive line spot battle, it's something in the 2 deep. It's a backup, and I have no idea what it would be because we haven't talked to anybody about who is that second left tackle, like who is the backup left tackle, and if it would normally, if is it Enoch Vamahi, then who is competing with him? I don't know. We just talked about them barely having 7. I don't know that they have enough to have a competition, like a heated battle in the 2 deep of guys who are going to play. So like, yeah, Grant Touton and Ben Crispin are really battling it out for the right tackle. I have no idea if that's actually happening, but those two guys aren't necessarily going to be in the mix this year. So I don't even know that that question for the offensive line is all that applicable because the first five is set, and really you're only looking for a couple of other guys, and the biggest battle might be between Vamahi and Pryor for the sixth spot, and they're not able to battle because Pryor isn't out there. So maybe it's Ben Christman trying to show that he can be the sixth man. Maybe it's a Zen Mahalski showing that he can be the backup left tackle. We don't really have enough information at this point. I don't to give you an answer. I don't know what you think, Tom.
I think we're at the point of spring right now where, I mean, they have been off for spring break all this week, so they've literally just had the 2 practices that first week, and those were, as Ryan Day described them, OTAs, so really not even full go practices. So that's where they're trying guys in spots, and just because they're trying a guy in a spot doesn't mean you're ever going to see them there again. It's just like, well, let's just throw this guy at tackle and see if he can play tackle. I think you're going to learn a lot more in the next week or two. But coming into the spring, I would have said the biggest offensive line spot battle is right guard. And is that Donovan Jackson? Is that one of the other guys? The way they're talking about Donovan Jackson, it sure sounds like that's not going to be as much of a battle as we thought it was. So, we'll somewhere in that second string offensive line, some of those guys are going to start to assert themselves. And if they assert themselves at the same position, well, then you're going to have a battle. But, right now, it seems like, Josh Pryor, Enoch Vamahi, those guys sound like they're probably going to be somewhere in that conversation. Kevin Wilson was talking up Zen Mahalski a little bit during his interview session last week. So, he's going to be in that conversation as well somewhere. But yeah, we'll have to kind of see when they get back and practice gets a little more serious, we may have a better answer for this. But that's it right now. As far as linebacker, I mean, it feels like both of those positions are somewhat wide open because they're still trying to figure out exactly what they want there. If, gun to my head right now, I'm going to give you Steel Chambers at the will and Cody Simon at the mic. But, Chip Trainum, what is he going to be this year? Tommy Eichenberg, is he going to be able to do the stuff that Jim Knowles is looking for that Mike Backer to do? Is Taraja Mitchell going to get in the mix somewhere there? I mean, I'm contractually obligated to mention CJ Hicks and the fact that CJ Hicks is a true freshman, and it's not realistic to expect CJ Hicks to get in the mix. But at some point later this year, maybe he moves up the ladder and can turn one of those positions into a little more of a battle. But it feels like those are both fairly wide open. I mean, for a position where you have basically all of your starters back, it feels like those two positions are both still fairly wide open.
Yeah, I think I would side with the middle linebackers being the more contested battle there, since I think Tommy Eichenberg got into the starting lineup because of Cody Simon's injury, played well down the stretch, and now how do those two guys fit into this defense? And you would expect Steel Chambers just to continue to improve, but you never know under a new coach and a new system how they're going to react. Defensive line, I think it's still too early because, one, there are no Leos yet. Two, I don't know where Tyleek Williams is playing. Like, I need to know who the nose tackles are, who the 3 techs are, and then we can talk about what the most contested battles are, in my opinion, and who is leading. And really, since nothing is really going on right now, there's nothing in terms of, there are no pads on yet. So how do you judge who is winning in the trenches? I don't think you can. So I think that is still to be determined. I need to know who is playing where, like who's a strong side defensive end, who's a weak side defensive end, who's a nose tackle, who's a 3 tech. Give us that information, and then we can start to, process through it. Without that, you're shooting, throwing darts in the dark because you don't exactly know who is playing what. And then to say that this battle is being contested, you don't know unless somebody has actually told you these are where these guys are, and I have not been told that.
No, and I mean, I think there's still a lot of moving pieces there, which, where's Cade Stover going to be? Where's they have, where's Mitchell Melton going to be? There's a bunch of guys who are sort of going to be moving between different spots, and that's true in a lot of different spots on this team. So it's still, there are a lot of positions that, there's certain positions that we feel pretty comfortable. We know who the starter is going to be. Anything else is somewhat wide open now, even with a returning starter. Because like you mentioned, Mike Backer with Cody Simon coming back, it's like should be Cody Simon, probably, you would assume, based on last year. But Jim Knowles is looking for some different stuff, so maybe we'll have to see. But yeah, there are a lot of interesting positional battles kind of going around, different spots around the team, and even when you feel like it's going to be one of these 2 or 3 guys. Let's look at the wide receivers. If you give me 4 guys, I will tell you, yes, 3 of these 4 guys will be starting. Where will they be starting? Well, we're out of time. We'll have to get to that one next time, because there's a lot there. You could do a bunch of different stuff, because there's no shortage of talent on this team, and it's just a matter of how who is going to fit best what they want to do, and give them who are the best 4 or the best 5, whatever the number is at that position group. And then sort of line those guys up as they see fit.
You could talk about the safeties too, with Josh Proctor having a slow build towards the end of spring. What happens if Jim Knowles and Perry Aliano absolutely love what they get out of Ronnie Hickman, a free safety, and Court Williams, a strong safety? Then what? And then you're going to have, because there's not going to be, I don't know that there's going to be much competition this spring as Josh Proctor gets back. And then in the fall, then it's going to be even a bigger deal, and how do things go there? So I think there's battles obviously all over the place, which is what you want, but they're still too early right now for a lot of these, because as you said, Tom, 2 practices in, no pads, just jogging around and doing some. It's not quite like field day at the end of the school year, but it's up there. So anything else, Tom, before we call this show done?
I think we're good for now. Get it done, get it posted, and then get back to basketball work. We got basketball to watch.
Tom, that is the first time you've ever said that on the show.
Maybe the last, but hey, the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament only come once a year, Tony.
That is true, and sometimes they don't come at all. But that was then. This is now time. We're not here to talk about the past. Anyway, that will do it for this episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in, as always. Enjoy the weekend of basketball just as you enjoyed Thursday, and have fun. Be safe. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.